I had it the whole time. I'm ready.
You're on.
Peace, everybody. Welcome back to Rise of the Moors. We're going to be going over quick rent deed for everyone. And remember, as we're waking up, remember the chapter in the Quran about magistrate and subject, how the glory of the king is the welfare of his people. So any more teaching anything, if they're not offering solutions or pointing you in the right direction, and clearly they ain't in it for the right reasons. Because the mission is to uplift our people. So if you see anyone just talking, running their mouth for likes or whatever, it ain't it, right? So we're going to start with the things we read at every meeting. Caveat emptor. Moors are men, upright, independent, and fearless, who care for the loved ones and follow the prophet through a destiny which is not uncertain nor unknown. They are fortified by the impregnable doctrine built upon love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. It is therefore folly at its greatest height for smelly culprits with their insidious plans to invade such a realm. They try and try, but their own bad planning brings down wrath upon their heads like the sword old Damocles had. Intrigue and scurrilous cunning find a difficult path to travel within the ranks of the Moors. This is so because the Moorish movement has been well planned by Prophet Noble Ali, whose latent powers are abundant, unknown, and may be called into action as a matter of defense at any moment. Prophet Noble Ali knows the people within his ranks who are interested. They are the vanguard of the movement as the Moorish hordes increase here in America. All of the Moors are active, not passive. A member's interest can only be in one direction, and having traveled over the roads years before, the Prophet knows where every member is along the road. A few feet below is another road where schemers work, where traders grin, and culprits bask in the sun. They think they're on the same road with true Moors, but the Moors are high above on the pinnacle, where they might view the destructionists as they fall for the last time in their bones bleach in the sultry midday sun. Hungry scavengers flying high catch scent, devour, and leave crying out, "Caveat emptor," cast out the dead carcass. The Moors high above see the pliers, purveyors, the worst that exist, hurl themselves downward by their own works as the hawks await, to be proclaimed at every meeting. Islam. I'm glad to know that I have a few faithful Moors among you all, and I desire for them to know the truth and the divine truth. There is a host of jealousy about me and the movement now by the same people of our side of the nation that claim that I was only a joke and unreal. But now, since they have found out from the government officials in the nations of the earth that this is the only sole foundation that all Asiatics must depend upon for their earthly salvation as American citizens, they are working every scheme that they can to disqualify me so that they may take charge of the situation. I've notified all these things to you long ago in the past. It is through the faithful Moors that attribute to the movement uplifting funds. The ones that paid their divine respect to me in the movement will be remembered. This is why I'm calling upon all faithful Moors to increase their faithfulness to me, your prophet, and your divine Moorish movement. I need finance, and I need it badly. Never before have I needed finance so badly as I do at present, so I can shut aside the discord that is facing the nation. It all comes through jealousy because of my fame and nobility. The nations of the world will not recognize the movement without I, the prophet, being head. It has been proven by my works, which I have performed in the past few years. Prophet Noble Ali. To the members of the Moorish Science Temple of America, Islam. This is the instruction from your prophet, Noble Ali. Be faithful unto your forefathers' divine and national creed, that you'll be blessed for your good deeds that you sow in the flesh. Allah is the one that judges the world, and his judgment is on now. His judgment is now on. But the weak can comprehend it not. The end of time is drawing near, so says Allah to his divine prophet, I, Noble Ali. That's why many hearts have been turned to stone, and many have eyes to see but cannot see, ears to hear but cannot hear, lest they would be confounded of their sins. These are trying hours now, dear Moors, and every evil spirit is moving. They are trying every weak mind to overthrow and drag out the true foundation that has been laid and to cause confusion in the minds of the ones that do believe. But if you have the true love of Allah and the spirit of your forefathers, you fear not what you hear or see, but will sacrifice the utmost of your very life to protect your movement and your prophet. Watch your enemies, dear Moors. Your enemies are the ones that speak against your prophet and ridicule him to the very lowest. And the ones that speak against your divine principles of your temples, act accordingly, and Allah will bless you for your good work. Peace. Your divine prophet, Noble Ali. Prophet warns all Muslims to be ready in every meeting. Also for the camera. That's Prophet Noble Ali, if you don't know. For the camera. Yeah. And if anyone of y'all didn't know. Prophet warns all Muslims to be ready in every meeting. I hereby inform all members that they must end all radical speeches while at work, in their homes, or on the streets. We are for peace and not destruction. Stop flashing your cards at Europeans. It causes confusion. Remember, your card is for your salvation. Failure to obey these orders will be of severe consequence. Now, I'm just going to interject on this. Remember, when we're waking up, as we're waking up, this European colonial system is still going on. Like when I went on that plane with my nationality card, they were confused because they're not used to that. They're not used to the natural people of the land exercising their birthrights. But I was still able to get on that plane. You know what I'm saying? So it does cause confusion, but that doesn't mean don't use it. It means stop being like, oh, look what I got, because that's not what it's for. Right? We're for love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. And when these principles are violated, justice must then take its course. Any member or group of members who hold malicious feelings towards the temple or the prophet, or violate the divine covenant of the Moorish movement, will receive their reward from Allah for their unjust deeds. All true Moors will and must obey the law as laid down to them by their prophet. If they lose confidence in their prophet, they should turn in their carding button, cease wearing their turban and fez, and return to the state where I, the prophet, found you. This is a holy and divine movement founded by the prophet Noble Ali. If the prophet is not right, the temple is not right. The prophet therefore is sending out the divine plea to all Moorish Americans that they do their part in protecting their prophet and the temple. This is an everlasting movement founded by the prophet through the will of Allah to redeem his people from their sinful ways. Peace, the divine prophet Noble Ali. And also he said, I'm going to paraphrase, if you have race pride and love your race, join the Moorish Science Temple of America, because then you know who you are, who your forefathers were. Where there is unity, there is strength. Together we stand, divided we fall. This is a movement for all strong men and women who think that their conditions can be better. He also said, if the Europeans and other nations are helping me, why not you? The nigger problem is our problem. So how about we help ourselves get out of it, right? And then here's proof for the record that I got on a plane from here to Florida, in Florida and back with my nationality card and my name, my free national name, not the straw name that they put on the driver's license or the birth certificate. So I'm just hiding my mailing location. Is it still blurred?
Yeah, it's not even trying to focus.
Is that better? You don't know what you're doing.
No, it's just
It's too close.
no contrast.
Well, it's on my Facebook, so check it out. Have you seen this? Pass it around. All right, so knowing that we're under European occupation, knowing that our people think that they're black, and Drali said a beggar nation can never reach its highest development of spirituality. And you'll often see our people and other Asiatics going to the European for Section 8 housing, getting apartments, just pretty much begging. But this is our land. You get what I'm saying? So what they've been doing is, since we haven't claimed our nationality, we haven't claimed our land, they've been escheating our land because it's considered abandoned within trust law. So since we don't claim it, we think that we're Negro, black, and colored, which means European property. And then Christian Black Codes of 1724 says blacks, which is Indians, Spanish people, Latinos, African Americans, Afro-Ricans, etc., all those things that aren't nationalities, they shall never own property. And anything that they do own, whether on their own industry, their own liberality whatsoever, shall be the full property of their masters. That's where the all capital letters name comes into play, where they claim ownership of everything. That's why they're able to just kick our people out of their homes, either their house or their apartment or whatever, because it's not their name. It's the European strong name that was branded on us at birth. Does that make sense? So once we nationalize and claim our free national name, Drali said leave all old business as it is, conduct all new business in your free national name. So if they're trying to evict you, you do it in your free national name with the clear conception that your status is correct, meaning you know this is your land and you know that they're foreigners, meaning you know that they're feudal lords, and any claim that they have whatsoever over any estate can be argued. That makes sense? So if you're talking to any family members, any so-called black family members, tell them to look at the Inter-American Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, approved by the true Americans in 1997, and I'll let everyone pass this around. In Article 1, it tells you who an indigenous person is. It says those who embody historical continuity with lands prior to the conquest of Europeans, meaning Native Americans. And then on the alternative definition, it'll say, as well as those brought involuntarily to the New World who free themselves from which cultures they've been torn. meaning you declared your nationality. Then, when you read Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, it says indigenous people have the right to the land and resources back. So if so-called black people are really indigenous to America, which Noble Drew Ali said, Moors, you're home. You were living up and down the Mississippi before any Europeans got here. Then when you look up the book, They Came Before Columbus by Ivan Van Sertima, he shows you the Olmec heads, big nose, big lips, the shit that we get made fun of for. That's proof that we're the original people. You know what I'm saying? So we really need our people to nationalize it. If we pass this around, Article 1 says that so-called blacks are indigenous people. And in the quick rep deed, I used the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. You'll see that. So does that make sense to kind of establish a little premise? Right? All right, cool. So we're going to go into an example of the quit rent deed. This is posted on my website, www.risingthemoors.org. You just go to the More section, click on writs, scroll down, it's the second one. Example of a quit rent, click on expand. And we went over what quit rent is earlier, but for the camera, quit means to release and rent is rent. So you're telling the feudal lord, excuse me, because remember, since these Europeans are pilgrims, and they even say in their own watered down version or corrupt version of history, they tell black people that they're pilgrims. And then when you look up the history of Ellis Island, late 1800s to the mid 1900s, about 12 million Europeans immigrated here, and now they're claiming to be Americans. So since they're not Americans, they're considered feudal lords. I'm only saying, I know we went over that, but the camera's on. So when you nationalize, you know that the only way to own property is to have the allodial title. You know that, because hopefully you've been studying. You know that a mortgage is not ownership. You know that a mortgage, the word mortgage means dead pledge. Hopefully you know that because you've been studying, right? Then you know that the word deed just means an act. So it means something was done. So you know that a deed of trust just means a trust was established, but that's not ownership of property. You know that. Then you know if anyone's claiming anything whatsoever, like if I buy this book, right, from the bookstore, I'm going to get a receipt that says I bought it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When you're dealing with homes and stuff like that, look up chain of title. The chain of title will show you proof from the original grantor that this estate was handed down to this person, and now they're the administrator. Chain of title. And remember, a deed of trust is not a title. A mortgage is not a title. So anyone claiming anything, whether European or not, if you ain't a Moor, if you claim that you own any property, this is for people, getting kicked out of their apartments and stuff like that. Because if they're Asiatic, but then they claim to be one of the European brands, they're considered European property. So since their masters own everything, you're not really going after them. You're going after the European master claiming ownership. Does that make sense? So you kind of have to look at it like you're not really dealing with that person. You're dealing with the person who's claiming ownership. Because chances are it's a European claiming ownership of the house and have an Asiatic property manager who don't really know what they're doing, but they just got a job, so they're cool with it, right? So even to find that information, if you don't know who the real owner is, you can go to the city tax assessor in City Hall, Providence. And if you go to the city tax assessor, you can say, I'm looking for the parcel ID. Remember, Drew Ali said we're part and parcel, right, land? I'm looking for the parcel ID for my house or my apartment or whatever. And they will give it to you for free, at least here they do. And then I'm going to pass this around. Here's an example of one. At the top, it says City of Providence, tax map number, because they also have maps in their offices of all these states, right? Then I have the parcel ID, which is the land ID, which the land is identified as. Then I'll have the corporate address, and then it'll have the current feudal lord who's claiming ownership and the date, and then their address. It has all this information on it. So this is stuff that we need to know. So when we issue quit rent deeds, we're not only sending it to the property quote unquote manager, but also to the feudal lord claiming ownership. You know what I'm saying? So you go to again, tax assessor. And then you can go to the recorder of deeds. And once you get that name from the tax assessor, go to the recorder of deeds, type his name in the computer, and you can see anything that they own. Any so-called mortgages and any even releases of mortgages. You can look it all up because it's all public. And you'll see that they never claim the land. It's always a corporate address. They never claim longitude and latitude. That's what we claim, because we ain't stupid, right? So with all, hopefully that makes sense, right? Any questions? I know I just ran my mouth. Any questions? Tax assessor, yes. Yep.
The city tax assessor, is that the same thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But the city tax assessor and city tax collector are different people. In the so-called Providence area, John A. Murphy is the city tax collector. He's also the recorder of deeds. Imagine that, right? So we ready? No more questions? All right, so we know they're foreigners, we're not. We know that the so-called story of slavery, we know they're really the original slaves. We know that, right? If you don't know, read Ivan Van Sertima, they came before Columbus. Read Michael A. Hoffman II, they were white and they were slaves. Read any book on the Barbary slave trade. Barbary means Moorish. We had them in bondage first, right? So, cool. Continuing. So this is an example of equipment deed. We put our national flag because we're not lost. I see someone want to hit the lights. Never mind, it's my job. I forgot. Excuse me. Thank you, though.
Light bearer.
Yeah, bro. So here's an example. So you send it to the feudal landlord, which you would get from the information that you got from the tax assessor, and you can also put the property manager too, or just send them another copy. Because also notice to the agent is notice to the principal. So if you just send it to the property manager, the principal is the feudal lord claiming ownership. But send it to both, I would suggest. Then you put insert your free national name. It's pretty self-explanatory. Then ex relation, we know what ex relation means, right? So it means I have information pertaining to this fake name, but I'm not claiming to be it. Because chances are, before we nationalized, we got into a contract for a living situation under that straw name, not knowing our proper person status. So now that you know it, you leave it as it is, but then since they're about to evict you, quote unquote, as you're you're nationalized now, then you hit them like, this is who I am, not this. And you'll see it in the way I write it. Any questions on that? Cool. So you're separating yourself from the European property straw name that they forced on us at birth. Which, getting into that, eventually we need to stop going to these European hospitals because they make us get birth certificates. We need to go back to that mindset of Asian foremothers and forefathers and get, conceive or beget our children at home. That alleviates them forcing us to get any birth certificates on our children. And then again, don't hit up Jamal when you're 9 feet in the pool and ask me what to do. Because people do that often, and it's a crappy situation, right? So then, in relation to, insert your apartment number and location, and then the parcel ID. So apartment number would be apartment 3A or whatever. Location number is the corporate address. Then the parcel ID is what you get from the tax assessor, right? And or account number, however, whatever way you get into that contract, list all the information, right? Then and then of course, affidavit of fact and discovery, writ of right. We went over writ of right. And then notice to the agent is notice to the principal. Notice to the principal is notice to the agent. That's codified as UCC 1-202. We're only using it as reference. We're not saying we're enforcing the UCCs. It's notice to the agent is notice to the principal is codified as your UCC 1-202. Then dear insert feudal lord. In order to come to a peaceful resolution in regards to any alleged rent owed or eviction notices, now I wrote this very general, so you can edit it, put your spirit on it. I am exercising my constitutional and contractual rights to discovery on this matter. It must be fully disclosed that I, insert your free national name, am an Aboriginal and Indigenous Moorish American, distinguished from and not to be held as surety for the straw name. Any questions on that? Are we clear on that? You need to be clear on that. All right. I am the natural person who currently inhabits, you don't reside, you inhabit. Yes? Oh, you're stretching. Because remember, the word res means a thing. We're not a thing. We're not things. We're humans. So we're not residents of crap. We inhabit these lands. Tracking? Clear on that? Cool. I am the natural person who currently inhabits and is occupying the living quarters referred to as apartment, etc., then the address, then the parcel number, then the longitude and latitude. Does everyone know how to do that?
No.
All right, I'll show you real quick. So you go to the internet, go to Google, go to Maps. Where's Maps at?
Go in that box. Yep. Sometimes.
You're a genius. You want to come over here and teach?
Sometimes.
All right, so we'll just do any random location, any point park, I guess. As soon as it loads. Memphis, Egypt, imagine that. Don't worry about what I was looking at. Because there's Memphis in Tennessee, which is part of the Mississippi, which is the Nile River. Yeah, because I'm a comedic philosopher. Well, I'm trying to right click. So when you right click, you can say what's here, and then the longitude and latitude is supposed to pop up.
All right.
And then you click on it, and then it'll tell you the degrees. I'll just wait.
And that's just a direct point. Longitude
Yes.
and latitude is just one direct point.
Yes, because remember, when you ever see masonry, you see the compass in the square? Because I was in the Marines, and they say, how do you read a map? Writing up. I should have brought my dictionary. A lot of dictionaries have maps in the back. And then if you look at the world map, it'll have the circle at the north gate, at North Pole, and it'll have numbers around it. And then it'll have the latitudinal lines with numbers on it too. So you plot your points using those points. Geographical locations, because there's a Friendship Street in every town. So Friendship Street don't identify nothing. You get what I'm saying? Does that make sense to everyone? All right. So since this is loaded, right click, what's here, then you see that? That's longitude and latitude. You click on that, and it should pop up with the degrees right here. You got so 41 degrees, 49.9 north, 71 degrees, 22, 7.0 west. So to turn that into degrees, minutes, and seconds, it's 41 degrees, 49 minutes, 0.9 seconds north, 71 degrees, 22 minutes, 22 minutes, 57.0 seconds west. That's how you, this is where the estate is located. So it's not 1, 2, 3, 4 Friendship Street, I'm only referencing that because that's on your record. This is exactly where it is geographically. Because we always claim the earth. Why? Because we are the original people of the planet. We don't claim no Friendship Street that some European made up. Any questions?
No.
And corporately identified as, let's say it's whatever housing unit, like it's JP Morgan housing complex or whatever, then you would add that in there too, right? Or the building name, because some buildings have name like building C, building A, or whatever. Just, use common sense for this part. I'm exercising my just sanguine, imperium writ of right, just post limine, and plenum rectum haberi, thus exercising my right of lawful claim to my estate, which is pretty much saying what all that's saying in this one line. And I wrote it like that so people learn, because a lot of the stuff is not tangible. And that kind of causes confusion with a lot of people because you can't touch this. You can't touch just post limine. It's the right to be restored to a status as if you were never removed from that status. You can't. That's not tangible. And then imperium is the right to command. I don't have the right to command in Thailand because I'm not Thai. But I have the right to command in Morocco because I'm Moroccan. But everyone has the common law right to command anything. Right? It is clearly stated in the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, signed by the former President of the United States, Barack Hussein Obama II, said at Articles 8, 10, 26, 28, and others, that indigenous people, i.e. Moorish Americans, cannot be forcibly removed from their lands, territories, homes, or estates, etc. Does that make sense? Everyone clear on that? So when our people say, Obama didn't do anything for black people, you're right. He did what he can for indigenous people, who were Moors. Of course, if you can prove on record that you are in fact not a feudal lord and are in possession of an allodial title to this estate, parcel, land, and the appurtenances thereon, meaning the house, i.e. the apartments, homes, housing units, etc., then the status is different. A deed of trust, warranty deed, mortgage, etc., does not stand in the law of evidence as absolute ownership of real estate, property, or land. You cannot prove that you are in fact ipso facto, that's what that means. Ipso facto means in fact. and and in law ipso jure, the holder in due course, standing in the law of evidence as the true owner, nor provide an original chain of title that the original grantor has passed down to you, or an original quitclaim from the original owner, passing the original wet ink signature or allodial title of ownership to you, then you lawfully and legally do not have the authority to ask, demand, nor seek any monetary compensation from me in the name of rent, and have no authority to command, suggest, nor imply an eviction. Therefore, this issue of rent is null and void. Does that make sense? Because remember, when the European, like as an example, you'll often hear them here in so-called Rhode Island, which is the Narragansett territory, they'll say, well, we got the deed of trust from the Indians. Well, first of all, this ain't India, so Indians can't give you crap. That's like saying we got the deed of trust from the Chinese people. This ain't China, so they can't give you anything. Then a deed of trust isn't ownership, so what you talking about? You own anything. Does that make sense? So chain of title. Chain of title. Don't let that BS deed crap go over on you. Because only the original people of this land can grant allodial titles. And you can't transfer hereditament, so they don't have it. That makes sense? So I asked them to produce something they cannot produce. And then what? An affidavit in law unrebutted stands as what? Law, truth, fact. You see how this is beginning to kind of alleviate a lot of the so-called black problems that we're facing? It would behoove our people to kind of nationalize like last year. If you cannot prove within 30 days that you are not a feudal lord with proof of nationality, why did I say that?
Because they can't. They
There's
can't show you proof of that.
some more.
Well, I mean, they're not Moors, so they don't have any allegiance.
That's true.
Administrative process.
One person at a time. That's true in part. That's also true in part. The reason why I said nationality is because your nationality is what determines your political status, dealing with rights, the management of a state, the management of your own affairs, and ownership of property. So if you're in America, North America, which is Morocco, and you're claiming to be European, this is not Europe. This is America. So the status is different. So you don't have any superior claim to any Aboriginal people of this land. That's why I asked that. And actual land/estate ownership records, then you are hereby lawfully demanded or commanded, which is imperial, to issue a quit rent deed to me, and you agree, so by you defaulting, you agree to this, that I am within my natural law and common law right to continue to inhabit, not reside, these living quarters unencumbered. Now remember, Noble Dwelly said enforce the Constitution. We have the right to pursue the happiness. Right? We have the right to not be violated in our person, papers, or effects, or our homes. This is enforcing the Constitution without saying it. But you can say that. Just like above where I said over here when I was talking about rent. You can also put in, are you asking me for gold and silver per the Constitution, or are you asking me for Federal Reserve notes? Be clear, because I'm confused. So get them to answer. And if they say, well, you got to pay me in Federal Reserve notes, then you think, the Constitution says no obligation shall be placed on contracts. And then the Declaration on Human Rights says no one may be forced to associate. I would have to associate myself with a private bank called the Federal Reserve to get their private commercial paper. I'm good. That makes sense? Because I can't force you to pay me in Jamal dollars when I'm the only one who prints that. Because then you'll be, and then if I say that, right, oh, you got to pay me in Jamal dollars to come to my class. And it's 5,000 Jamal dollars. And you don't have it? Well, okay, well, work for my partner here. Work for him, and then he only pays you $1 a year. You ain't getting into this class. That's how they control our people. So, oh, you need a job? Yeah, go work at McDonald's, go ahead, work at this job. Because they all register to do business with the so-called state, which is registered with the de facto federal government. You see how it kind of trickles down? So they all agreed to use the Federal Reserve note to rob the Moors, and they agreed to not really spoil the game. Because we make them rich. Does that make sense? So ask them, what do you want payment in? And then let them answer. if they don't, then what? It's a default. Exactly. Great. Continuing. Of course, per the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, you're late. Peace. Welcome. Usufruct, the Constitution for the United States of America of 1789, and the Republic of the State of insert your state, well, the state, Constitution, I cannot be removed from my living quarters without due process of law. See how that's enforced in the Constitution? If you have any valid claim against me, per Article 3 of the Federal Constitution, the Act of State Doctrine, and for reference purposes only, Title 28 of the United States Code, subsection 1332, this issue must be heard in a federal court, i.e. consular court. Does that make sense? Yes? Why does that make sense?
Because it's diversity of citizens.
Exactly, it's diversity of citizenship. We cannot be citizens of the United States. Said at Article 13, Section 12 of the Constitution. It said the descendants of Africans shall not be citizens because those Africans are really Moors. And those Moors are the ones who allow the Europeans to come here in the first place. So that's like the Chinese people allowing Germans to come to China, and then the Chinese people now being German citizens. Like, what are you talking about?
You said
That's-
Article 13, sorry.
Article 13, Section 12.
All right.
That's why after they assassinated Abraham Lincoln in 1868, they created the artificial 14th Amendment, which is unconstitutional. Do you want me to pass around that paper that says that? Proceedings and debates of the 90th Congress, First Session, Volume 113, Part 12, June 12, 1967, June 20th, 1967, pages 15309 to 16558. This is page 15641. The 14th Amendment is unconstitutional. The purported 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution is and should be held to be ineffective, invalid, null, void, and unconstitutional for the following reasons. I'm just getting on to number 3. The proposed 14th Amendment was rejected by more than 1/4 of all the states then in the Union, and it was never ratified by 3/4 of all the states in the Union, Article 5. And it has more things, and I highlighted all the things that says exactly why the 14th Amendment is unconstitutional. You see this argument. You asked for something.
Somebody on YouTube said you're giving them fucking life.
Then, this is from the Congressional Globe, the official proceedings of Congress published by John C. Rives, Washington, D.C. 38th Congress, First Session, Saturday, April 9th, 1864. Article 13, then I highlighted Section 12, the traffic in slaves with Africa is hereby forever prohibited on pain of death and the forfeiture of all the rights and property of persons engaged therein. And the descendants of Africans shall not be citizens. So any so-called black leader talking about, I teach 14th Amendment rights and more colored people need to be involved in politics, they're a goddamn liar. And they're selling you out. And chances are they're getting paid by the European to do so. And they got a comfortable job, comfortable life. They probably discharge their mortgage while we pay them. And they got a nice suit, nice car,
Nice socks.
dope suits. They got dope suits. Right?
Tie.
Yeah, they got a tie up. Pass it around. My lovely Moabites. Continuing. Consuls from the Moorish American Consulate must be present in order to ensure that the supreme law of the land and due process of law is not violated. So if you're not a Moorish American, if you're like from somewhere else, you go to your consulate. Hey, consulate, these Europeans are saying this. They're trying to see me in 6th District Court, or they're trying to see me in so-called Superior Court, 250 Benefit Street, when clearly the issue is diversity because I'm not a citizen of the United States, because the United States is a corporation company per Title 28, Chapter 6, Subchapter 176, Subsection 3002 is a federal corporation. Human beings can't be citizens of dominoes. So clearly it's diversity. So concepts must be present. Everyone tracking? Any questions on that? Did I say that too fast? I'll say it again slowly.
Yeah, you did.
Okay. Since the United States is a federal corporation per Title 28, Chapter 6, Subchapter 176, Subsection 3002 of the United States Code, number 15A, human beings cannot be citizens of that. Therefore, if you're a national, you should contact your consulate immediately because it's government to government, because it's diversity. That's enforcing Article 3 of the Constitution. Does that make sense? The representatives from your nation are supposed to be with you, while representatives from their nation and whoever is bringing charges against you is there. So that, let's say I'm a Moor and you represent the United States. If there's a treaty between Moors and the United States, then your people will be there, my people will be there, and we discuss the treaty. What happened? Is there a violation of the treaty? No. Is there a violation of your law? No. Is there a violation of our law? No, we're good. All right, well, diplomatic immunity or leave us the hell alone. You know what I'm saying? Same thing with any nation. If China got a treaty with Japan, then any Japanese citizen having any issue with China is consular court. Period. And that's in the American Constitution, Article 3. Continuing, you are also clear on the fact that any attempt to force me off or out of, excuse the typo, this living space is an act of genocide, and you cannot call any county, state, or municipal police agents on me without knowingly committing an act of genocide. Everyone tracking on that? You see how this kind of ends gentrification, which so-called black people always complaining about? Gentrification, you see how this ends this? We're not just talking about gentrifying our communities. No, this is how we hit them. Emotions. I actually put a lot of emotions in this, but according to the United Nations Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, approved and proposed for signature and ratification or extension by General Assembly Resolution 260A3 on the 9th day of December 1948, entering into force the 12th day of January 1951. In accordance with Article 13, genocide includes, but is not limited to, any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group as such, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring out its physical destruction in whole or in part, etc. Is everyone clear on that? You see how that covers everything that they're doing to us? So we're trained to call everything that the Europeans are doing to us racism, when it's really genocide by definition. You see how we hit them with genocide now? Well, they're racist and they don't like me. This is genocide. Because if you're in my apartment, right, and I'm European, right, I say, well, I know that this nigger does not know he's a Moor, so I'm gonna go ahead and evict him. Then you have children. So now you and children are living on the streets. How is that not genocide? Someone explain to me how that's not genocide. Because it is, right? So let's hit these Europeans with genocide, which is what Al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz was about to do, who some of y'all know as Malcolm X. He was about to hit the Europeans with genocide. That's why they killed him. Because international courts can hear genocide. They can't hear racism. Criminal courts can hear genocide, not racism. I was going to that. Because the word race, what does the word race mean? I got it. Because our people really, seriously need to be clear on this. Because the Europeans do not budge when our people yell, you being racist. They don't care. Because that's all you say. You don't go to court and take them to court. You just say, you're being racist. And then you go tell your friends, I told them they were being racist. And they're like, yeah. That's exactly what they do. Race.
The real definition of racism?
Race means to shoot out. Now we all know Everyone knows this, even so-called black people. Everyone knows that we all shot out from the African woman. Everyone knows that. So there's only one race. It's called human. And then we identify each other by nationalities, right? Ism is a suffix meaning practice or way of life. So knowing that we shot out from the same woman, and knowing that the word race means to shoot out, practicing that would be continuing the human species. So is that a crime? No, it's not. So can any criminal court hear racism? No, they can't. This is why they don't teach our people etymology, because that's how you know how to read. E-T-Y-M-O-L-O-G-Y. Etymology. So instead of making emotional arguments like they're being racist, because some European taught you that that meant genocide, you say, no, they're committing genocide on our people. And if you're going to claim reparations, repair a nation, what nation do you belong to? Because black's not a nation. You see how, based on this, we can do a class action suit against these Europeans with genocide? Genocide. Now, excuse me if I'm barking at y'all. I don't want y'all to take that energy as me putting it on y'all, but I want y'all to feel the weight of this argument that we can bring to the international community against these people committing acts of genocide by the day on our land. That makes sense? Everyone clear on that? And how that relates to what we're talking about? Yes?
Yep.
Where's that thing that I always lose?
I was bugging.
Alright, cool. But again, that's why the flag's upside down. Because go down to Broad Street, right? What's it called? Crossroads. You see nothing but Asiatics, nothing but indigenous people living on the streets. And then right near Crossroads, right near Broad Street, there's another block, 3 rows of like 5 houses each, abandoned, and then they fenced it off. Not only is it boarded up, they fenced it off. Why? So the Aboriginal people don't go in their own homes and then have a better quality of life. That's genocide. Because that's creating conditions to bring out destruction in whole or in part of our people. And remember the Asiatic covenant that Noble Drew told us to enforce, they're our brothers and sisters. Just because they don't say they're Moors or whatever, they're still our blood. Because you're whatever you are by your bloodline, no matter what you call yourself. You know what I'm saying? So don't think that just because I'm Moorish, you know what I'm saying, that they ain't your people. Because we're fighting for them too. Because if it affects them, it affects us. Goes back to the chapter on unity in the Quran, where every living thing is bound together to every other living thing. So don't think that just because you notice you got something going on. Yep, I son you. So.
Hashtag facts.
Hashtag big facts, right? So continuing, it is clear that removing any Aboriginal person from their living space is an act of genocide, which inflicts conditions on our lives calculated to bring a lower quality of life, thus preventing us from properly raising our families and the like. Now you can go off on that. This is just an example, but I need y'all to know this is how we need to come at them. We need to come at them together, because just like the prophet said, where there is unity, there is strength. And you never see any Japanese people alone. Every time you go down to, what is that place that was that yesterday? Federal Hill or whatever?
Just general downtown. Federal Hill.
Anywhere you see any other Asiatics, like a lot of South Koreans are here, you always see them in groups. I bet you they ain't suing in just one of them. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? And then without animosity, without malice, issued by my hand, with a sound mind on this day, etc., 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 put as many witnesses as you feel proper. And then CC to the Moorish American Consulate, and whichever de facto governor is in your territory, so you put their name. So here's Gina Raimondo doing business as the governor, because all governors are substitute bays.
Say that again.
All governors are substitute bays, because we want to be Negro, black, colored, and Indian instead of being Moors.
So somebody has to fill that void.
Exactly. because governments have to keep running. Because this planet is not slowing down just because we want to be black. Right? Also, to the Attorney General in the so-called state, Peter Kilmartin, which is his name here, also the Chief Judge of the United States District Court for the district that you're in, his name is William E. Smith. Yep, and David M. D. whatever, he's the Chief Sheriff here. And then Jeff Sessions is the Attorney General of the United States Corporation Company. And when you go to the post office, you get a green and white slip, that's certified mail, and then you get a green slip, which is what they have to sign for. I like to put both of those numbers at the bottom because it creates a contract or joinder with those other instruments. So, yeah, that'd be great. So he's about to get an example, but if I put the certified mail number on this instrument and then hand it to you, I have the receipt that you got it. It's as if you got that document. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense? All right, cool. Because remember, notice to the agent, notice to the principal. So if you just send something to them and they sign for it, you get it back, you put that number on it. That's proof on the record that they got what you said. And if they don't respond, then that's what? That means they agree. So by us sending this to any feudal lord, you're saying you know they are committing genocide if you try to do this, right? And then if they agree, then what can you do? Charge them with genocide. That's what you can do. Any questions?
You sent that with the parcel info too?
Yes, you type it in.
And with that, you give them a certain amount of time?
Yes, it says 30 days in there. It says 30 days in there, and then you can also, when they don't respond in 30 days, hit them with a default notice. Whereby you say, well, since you didn't respond, that you didn't prove that you own anything. Clearly you don't. Clearly I don't owe you rent. Clear. Yeah, so you can get this and this at the post office. You can just take handfuls. You can either send this on its own or you can send this with this. So at the top, this number peels off and it goes at the bottom right here. So you put this number and this number. So there's two numbers. This number is the certified mail receipt. You see it?
Yeah.
That peels off. That number goes in this section right here. And you also put that number because this is the domestic return receipt, which they have to sign for. So this will come back to you in the mail that they signed for it. It says this number and that number is on your document, but you kept a copy. That's proof that they got it. And they can never say they didn't. Just like when we went to court with Tusa, right? And we was talking to the slipback attorney, the gorilla attorney, who were both Asiatics. He said, oh, we were trying to hand this to you. We sent it in the mail, certified, so it's going to be on the record. They were like, it's not going to be on the record. Just because you sent it in the mail to the court, that means it's on the record. And then, lo and behold, we got up there, and the so-called judge was like, oh, yeah, we got it. Because it's on the record.
On the record.
Because notice to the agent is notice to the principal, and we got that signature. So if you're trying to get to me and you mail her something, you already know she's associated with me, and she's responsible for giving that to me. Just like when we sent notice to the governor, so-called Gina Raimondo, the so-called governor, Dan Brown signed for it, which means what?
Gina Raimondo got it.
She got it.
Got it.
And then kind of speaking from the hip, loud. Per the Constitution of Rhode Island, Article 3, Section 7, it says all elected officials must be responsive to the people. So since we sent her a letter, not only that, but then in the Rights of Indigenous People says the state must recognize the elected or selected representatives of the indigenous people. They must recognize them. So we can hit her with a tort claim if she does not respond. A tort is a violation of a contract. The contract is her oath to the Constitution, both of them, federal and state. Does that make sense? That applies all over this country. So all the notices that the council court been handing out, you see where I'm going with this? You see how our people really need to be part of this? Yes.
Question.
No.
So if a person wants to do the quick claim or quick claim deed, the first thing they need to do is go to the post office and grab them some
You
slips.
should get a bunch of these, yeah.
Because when you are entering your information on the template that you provided, they're gonna need that information and put it at the bottom, typing
Yes.
it, correct? Okay,
Yes.
because you're not
You can-
signing anything.
Well, if you're gonna make a lot of copies, it's easier to just type it in
Yeah,
instead of handwriting it on all of
right,
them.
right.
So yes, get this before you start doing stuff.
These are free. You can
Yeah,
walk
they're
to the
free.
post office and
They're
grab
free.
a little stack of each.
Yeah, they're free.
They've got plenty of them.
Yep.
And
Any
you
other
don't wanna-
questions?
I just wanna make sure you don't wanna mix and match the form up with writing it in when you.
Yes,
have-
no, everything has to be
everything
uniform,
is
yes.
typed in, okay.
Yes,
That's
you are
fine.
great. You're picking up the slack. That's good. Remember, common sense. Dorley said, everyone who uses their 5 senses, do so. That's saying common sense. No, sight, taste, beautiful, whatever. That's just, everyone,
That's it. That's it.
any other questions? That was great. Any questions in the chat?
Well, I gotta wait. He just asked the question. No, they're just making comments.
Okay, if no questions, how many of you know that the University of Rhode Island discovered ancient Quranic artifacts that predate Christopher Columbus by at least 500 years? Y'all don't know that? It was
Say that again.
2016.
Say that again.
The University of Rhode Island, the head of the research team, his name was Professor Ivan, Evan, Yurisco, Yuriesco. They found Quranic manuscripts that predate Christopher Columbus by at least 500 years. What does that tell you?
We were here for it.
Now, if you know history, you know that Moors are referred to as Muslims or Muslim, right? And then when you're talking about Islam, you're talking about Muslims, which you're talking about Moors, because we were the chief protectors of the Islamic creed. You know that, right? This is why law and history must be taught together. Because if this exists and they admit it, that means we're at least Aboriginal or at least indigenous, which means we're here before Europeans, so they don't have any claim, so they can't kick us out of anything, right? So feel free to pass this around. I'll read it. Discovery of 9th century Quranic manuscripts predate Columbus travelers by 5 centuries. For centuries, it was believed that Christopher Columbus was the first man from the old continent to cross the Atlantic to the New World. But new evidence from a research team from the University of Rhode Island, which is where we are right now, so-called Rhode Island, right? Suggest Muslim seafarers, and Moors are known as what? A seafaring people, right? Okay. Might just be the first people to have settled. Let me just read that again. I think you missed it. New evidence from a research team from the University of Rhode Island suggests that Muslim seafarers might just be the first people to have settled on the shores of America. A possibility that could rewrite history as we know it.
They said, get him, Jamal.
And then when you look up the history of the Prime Minister of Turkey, Erdogan, I think I'm saying his name wrong, probably. And he had a meeting with a lot of the South American Muslim leaders, and he told the world that we were here first. But we're making this up, right? The discovery completely took the researchers by surprise, admits Professor Ivan Yurisco, in charge of the research team. We were expecting to find traces of prehistoric Native American settlements, that fake crap, like how it felt the last that many years in dirt, right? As we have in the area for the past decades. We were not prepared to find 9th century clay pot containing ancient manuscripts written in Arabic. Well, written in the Arabic language, he explains. Blah, 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 blah. A number of items were found as cloths, coins, 2 scimitars. Yet, the remaining artifacts were in such bad state that they are barely recognizable, as rust has destroyed any possible recognizable trace of writing on the swords and coins, and the pieces of cloth having rotten due to age and extreme humidity of the area. So pass this around. Also, this book is titled The Discovery of America, an Outgrowth of the Conquest of the Moors by the Spaniards. Then, let's just flip on over to the preamble. This is what, or the preface, this is what the preface says. The general public, and especially the young of our land, may possess in condensed form, and become thoroughly familiar with the cause which led to the discovery of America by Christopher Columbus in 1492, out of which grew the revival and final establishment of the heliocentric system, and also the government of the United States, proves the incentive for the publication of this work. Entered according to Act of Congress, because they always have to tell the truth to avoid karmic debt. So they're telling people, Act of Congress in the year 1883. First page. The discovery of America by Christopher Columbus was an outgrowth of the conquest of the Moors by the Spaniards. The Moors, commanded in Arabia by Arabian officers, expelled the Visigoths from Al-Andalus, South Spain, in the year 711, and established the kingdom of Cordoba, which they held until the year 1236. During the 8th century, they also founded Granada, which at first constituted part of the kingdom of Cordoba. Under the administration of the Mohammedan emirs, Cordoba became the seat of learning and refinement. Great encouragement was given to the study of mathematics, chemistry, and physical science. The works of Aristotle, Hippocrates, all these Europeans, was translated in Arabic and became the authority of Saracen astronomy and medicine. So when you say Saracen, you say Semitic, you're saying Arab, you're saying all that stuff, you're saying Moorish. And then this just says by Act of Congress. So do the Europeans know what the Moors are? Also, to support that we were already here, go to my book, page 80. If you got my books on page 80. So there's an updated version of my book that's out there. I'm not sure what page it's on in that one. Page 80. Actually, let's go to page 77. All right. This is from When Rocks Cried Out by Horace Butler. Egypt had crossed the Atlantic Sea in ships more than 10,000 years before Columbus. Before the time of Christ, 10,000 years before the time of Christ. They had built the world's largest cities in South and Central America and in Mexico. They had united those city-states into a union that stretched from Brazil and South America to Mexico and into Africa. Then we look at the South American coat of arms. They got the Phrygian hat, right? And then Phrygian is really from Phrygia, which is in Turkey. The Ottomans, Turks, the Moors, Moorish Empire, right? Most modern historians deny passionately a transatlantic origin of the Aztecs. And then the Marine Corps song from the halls of Montezuma, the shores of Tripoli, right? I was in the Marine, so I know, right? Got it up. I was singing against my own people who didn't know it. When I first learned it, it wasn't funny at the time. I was depressed. But now you're laughing at my depression.
You're able to laugh.
Oh, yeah. The censor or interpreter of the work failed to continue using Moorish in dark complexion to describe the Mexicans. So this is just quotes from the book. The African presence was effectively hidden, even while the descriptions expose the people's braided hair, Moorish clothing, their mosques, which is Moorish, African belief system, which is Moorish, and African ornamentation, which is Moorish. Spanish writers who saw the Aztecs and who knew the Moors had revealed that the Aztecs even wore the same clothing used by the Africans called Moors. And then you can relate this to certain black people when they say, well, you know, the Pinta and the Nino were navigated by black people. They're really Moors, because they knew about here. Why Christopher Columbus had Moors and that to bring him here. And then when you read this book, you'll see that after King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella united their kingdoms and fought against us, then Christopher Columbus was like, well, since y'all got all that gold from the Moors, let's take even more from them. Back. I'll skip that part. What else we got here?
When rocks cry out.
Yeah, that was When Rocks Cry Out by Horace Butler. Also, check out this. They call the Olmec head with the tassel on it. Olmec, remember Noble Drew Ali said Amexem was Africa's ancient name. And then we take the prefix of Amexem and the suffix of Africa, you get the word America. And then that is clearly a tassel hanging from this thick-nosed, thick-lipped stone head. That's older than any European and any one of us. So how are they kicking you out of some land that's yours? Then, page 79. I'm pretty sure this is also from, this is also from When Rocks Cry Out. Other ancient Egyptian records describe building projects carried out during the reign of Taharqa. And who I added in, Taharqa was a pharaoh of Tamari, otherwise known as Egypt, Kemet, Kemetar, or Hekupta, during the 25th dynasty, 690 BC. One of these inscriptions mentions something very curious. Pyramids that had tall stairways, which led to temples on the top of the pyramids. In Egypt, they don't have stairways on the pyramids. In Guatemala, they do though. And then we look up Queen Mu, who was a female, who was a pharaoh, who ruled Atlantis and Egypt from Guatemala. You see that we've always been here. I had seen ancient pyramids in Americas, and I knew that most of these pyramids had tall stairways. Their pyramids in what we now call Egypt and Northeast Africa have no stairways on their exteriors or temples or their summits. The ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs were describing pyramids in the Americas, not the pyramids in Northeastern Africa. The Egyptian account of the double stairway is on a stele reportedly taken from a temple on the Nile River. The stele speaks of blessings granted to Ramses II by an Egyptian deity. Here is a double staircase inscription carved on the stele. Thou hast made an Ost residence to make strong the boundary of the two lands. And America's what? Two continents. It is plentiful in provisions for Egypt, flourishing like the four pillars of heaven. I put on thy crown with thy own two hands when thou appearest upon the great double staircase. That stairway is on the pyramid of the sun at Tukan. I'm not sure if I'm saying that. Was the Egyptian stele revealing that Ramses had been crowned pharaoh on the double staircase of a pyramid in Mexico? I say he was. Right? Also, this is from Pre-Columbian Muslims in the Americas by Dr. Yusuf Moru. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right either. He says, more important, as a proof of the precedence of Islamic presence over the European one, Christopher Columbus wrote in his journal that on Monday, October 21st, 1492, he saw a mosque on top of a beautiful mountain while his ships were sailing near Gibara, Gibara, on the northeast coast of Cuba. And then, thanks to Grecia, who's from Cuba, she revealed to us that there's a town in Cuba called El Moro, which means the Moor. And then we do research on Noble Drew Ali. We went to the Pan-American Conference in Cuba, right? And then when you read the Quran, it says, all things happen according to law, there are no coincidences. In fact, ruins of mosques and minarets bearing Arabic Quranic verses were also discovered in Cuba, Mexico, Texas, and Nevada. So by no coincidence, they also found ancient Quranic manuscripts in so-called Rhode Island. Then, skip that. On the third voyage by Columbus to America in 1498, he visited Trinidad. Later, he noticed in South America that the native used colorful handkerchiefs that resembled the headdresses and loincloths of Guinea. He referred to them as almazars. Imagine that, right? Which means in Arabic, wrapper, cover, apron or skirting. The Almazars, look up Al-Andalus, were the same as the ones the Moors, Spanish or North Africans, Muslims, used to import from West Africa to Morocco, Spain, and Portugal. Later, the Spanish conquistadors of the Caribbean and Mexico, Hernando Cortez, wrote that the women wore long veils and the men wore breechcloth painted in the style of Moorish draperies. I don't know what that is. Also, in another book, The Islamic Influence in Pre-Colonial and Early America, a historical legal snapshot by Nadia B. Ahmed at Peace Law School, American history is incomplete without exploring the entire Islamic influence on it. Academic textbooks should reflect the role Muslims had in establishing this nation and its legal scholarship. Multiple sources of evidence suggest that Muslims from Spain, who are who? Moors. In West Africa, who are who? Moors, arrived in the Americas at least 5 centuries before Columbus, which is plausible given to their level of education and expertise in navigation. In the 12th century, Al-Sharif al-Idris, 1097-1155, an Arabic geographer, reported on the journey of a group of North African seamen who reached the Americas. And then there's more to it, but that's pretty much the gist of it. You get it, we've been here. The Europeans needed to teach us that we're from somewhere else so they can implement these acts of genocide against us. Then also, when you read, there's another document that I have in here, that the Pope, Francis, he pretty much says, Pope says indigenous people must have final say about their land. Is all of this kind of following the thread, right? Pope says indigenous people must have final say about their lands. This is from David Hill, Monday, 20th day of February, 2017. 2017.
Very recent.
This is yesterday recent. In the 15th century, papal bulls promoted and provided legal justification for the conquest and theft of indigenous peoples, lands, and resources worldwide. The Inquisition, the Crusades against who? The Moors. And then that North Councilwoman admitted that the Moors are indigenous to America. What's wrong with our people? The consequences of which were still being felt today. So-called racism, which is really genocide that we're dealing with. Just pass it around. You get it. You just look this up, I'll put it on camera.
Yep.
I have the link to the website where I got it from. Also on this page, I got what the Pope said about indigenous people from the Vatican Press website. The Vatican has their own website, if you didn't know. It's press.. So any questions? Any questions? Just that kind of had to get to that little history part to substantiate that. Because if you're not clear that you were already here, now you don't need permission from someone else to say, you can't come to me and say, Jamal, can you make me a Moor? No, I can't. Your mother already did. Because that's what the Indians are doing to our people. They're saying, well, you have to have this ID and number to be part of this tribe. And we're a tribe means family. So as soon as you're born, you're part of the tribe. Multiple tribes make the nation, so clearly you're national. Everyone clear on that? All right, that's it. That's it for equipment. We can go way more into it. We can go way more into this, but I kind of want to end this so we can talk more openly. If anyone has any specific questions or whatever, we can ask that off camera. The people who are about to sign out, so ask questions if you got them. If you don't, you missed your chance.
No questions on this?
No questions on the chat?
No, just comments.
What are they saying?
Anything
So,
helpful?
you look like a young Haile Selassie.
Who cares about
We are amazing.
Old said we need to stop
Islam
caring
7.
about merely ideas of men. Who cares about what I look like? I care
Don't
what I
need
look like.
SF 181.
You don't need the SF 181.
You know, show you some
Look up.
money.
No.
Look up. No, I'm not doing that. Look up. is in reference to the SF 181. First, look up the right to self-determination. First, look that up. Then look up General Civil Orders of June 10, 2014, which says all contracts whatsoever from the United States Corporation Company are null and void for fraud, which includes citizenship.
So no green cards.
Everything. First is yes.
Somebody asks, I can quit claim land into my trust.
That sounds like a statement.
No, it's a question mark behind
You
it.
can do whatever you want. Yes. But caveat emptor. Caveat emptor. Any other questions?
How to go about this the proper way? There's a
Send it
bunch
to
of
feudal lord. All right, so if I'm claiming, let's say you're my tenant, right? And I say, you got to get out because you're late on rent. And then you send something, and you send that quick claim in the mail to me. That's sending it the proper way because I got it. Because remember, all law is contract. Relationships, it's contract. Conversations, that's contract. You showing up to places, that's contract. All law is contract. All law, Allah, right? Imagine that.
what's the treaty Mexicans can use to stay in the United States?
There's a treaty. There is a treaty that we just went over the other day.
Yep.
Treaty of Guadalupe and something else. And also the Treaty of Peace and Friendship.
Yep.
Because if you look at the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, it says that we were accepting pesos, which means what? Mexico's part of.
And there's also the Treaty of Peace and Friendship between
Wait,
Mexico.
what's the question again?
What's the treaty that Mexicans can use to stay in the United States?
Well, you're not staying in the United States. You're in North America. Because remember, the United States is a corporation company, so they don't have jurisdiction over any states. That's why in the General Civil Orders of June 10, 2014, it says all contracts, and they say citizenship, are void. Because they don't, only the Aboriginal people of the land can naturalize you and grant you citizenship. That's why it's not only in our interest to nationalize, it's in other nationals on our land to help us do so. That's why that flag's upside down. Because when nations see flags upside down, that means that nation is under duress and other nations know they need help.
Somebody said my mom's house was foreclosed on. Can I send a quick claim deed to get it back?
Yes, you can, because jurisdiction can be challenged at any moment. So have them produce the allodial title, which proves that they're the owner of anything, to make a lawful action like that.
How can I link up with you? I'm located near you and been trying to find someone local Moors to build with.
Well, add me on Facebook because I post where the location is going to be every Friday.
Yeah. Should we start posting that on the website?
Sure.
riseofmoors.org.
We can do that.
We'll start posting
Can I-
where the classes are
I'd like to
going to
read
be.
some stuff from El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, aka Malcolm X. Everyone knows who Malcolm X is, right? All right.
Somebody-
If you didn't, you fucking
Somebody
didn't.
wants to know about the power to deport people.
The power to deport people. How about we get our people to nationalize first, then we consider that power? Because
Yeah.
people worried about traveling with license plates and not having them.
And the Facebook is Rise of the Moors. And what's your Facebook?
Oh, Jamal Talib Abdul Bay, I'll spell it.
Regular spelling.
I think it's kind of long.
Oh, you want to do it right here? So
I don't really read this on me. It might turn off one day.
So, it's going down.
This is what my name is.
Indeed.
Easy to think, right? Are you jealous?
You going straight across, you got it.
Keep track where he is.
That's what I'm saying. That's me
There you go.
on Facebook.
Nice.
But even that's not me. Wanna know why? I am.
There you are.
Remember? I am that I am, so you are that you are. Tracking, right? Huh? Yeah. All right, so these are some quotes from Al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz. He said, this is from Interview with Malcolm X. The following interview was given by Malcolm X to Young Socialist editorial board members Jane Barnes and Barry Shepherd in 1965. I'm skipping a lot. He said, but when I was in Africa in May, in Ghana, I was speaking with the Algerian ambassador, who is extremely militant and is a revolutionary in the true sense of the word, and has his credentials as such for having carried on a successful revolution against oppression in his country. I told him that my political, social, and economic philosophy was Black nationalism. Nationalism. He asked me very frankly, well, where did that leave him? Because he was white. Now remember, when you read white in Black's Law Dictionary, it has nothing to do with skin tone, because it says it does not mean Caucasian race, Aryan race, or Indo-European races. And it'll say it includes the Moorish inhabitants of Spain. Then when you go to that dictionary that's right under it, look up Blackamoor, it'll say any dark-skinned person, especially an African Negro. And then right above that, it'll say it includes all European Jews more or less intermixed, meaning they have to be mixed with our blood to be considered white, hence so-called Prince Harry and the Asiatic woman that he married. But they're not noble without our blood. Why? Because we are the original people of the planet. And most every other nation recognizes that they come from us, because it's just the truth. Like, this is a board. What more do you want me to say? It's a board. Right? He was an African, but he was Algerian. And to all appearances, he was a white man. Now, when you read history about the Barbary slave trade, the reason why the Algerians and some other Northwest Africans are light-skinned is because we were trafficking them in their women, and we were mating with some of them. Just read. Right. And he said, if I define my objective as the victory of Black nationalism, where does that leave him? Where does that leave revolutionaries in Morocco, Egypt, Iraq, Mauritania? So he showed me where I was alienating people who were true revolutionaries, dedicated to overthrowing the system of exploitation that exists on this earth by any means necessary. You see how nationality is the order of the day? He also said, I don't favor violence. So he was asked, is it true, as is often said, that you favor violence? He said, I don't favor violence. If we could bring about recognition and respect of our people by peaceful means, well and good, by peaceful means, well and good. Everybody would like to reach his objectives peacefully. But I'm also a realist. The only people in this country who are asked to be nonviolent are quote unquote Black people. I've never heard anybody go to the Ku Klux Klan and teach them nonviolence, or to the Brick Society and other right-wing elements. Nonviolence is only preached to quote unquote Black Americans. And I don't go along with anyone who wants to teach our people nonviolence until someone at the same time is teaching our enemy to be nonviolent. I believe we should protect ourselves by any means necessary when we are attacked. Yes.
No.
Oh, and then when you read the hadiths or the oral statements by Noble Drew Ali, he said, if someone's attacking you, I'm paraphrasing, flee. If you cannot flee, he said, drop the world on them, because you have the right to self-preservation. He also said, unwarranted opposition. Paraphrasing, he was stupid. You know what I'm saying? So don't just be saying, well, you're light-skinned, so I think you're white, I think you're racist, right? No emotional responses. And another quote that he said, he was the man. This is also in my book. And this is on page 138 of my book. This is from, I'm gonna read the part I wrote and then read what he said. If we can march and pray, shouting Black Lives Matter, draining all of our energy and accomplishing nothing, spending money on sports events, basketball tickets, pay-per-view boxing and MMA fights, funding mega churches, funding music shows and spending quote unquote money on concert tickets, funding bars and strip clubs, then we can take our places amongst the affairs of men and actually produce and or implement a cure for our future generations. But it will only happen through nationalizing, through the Moorish Divine and National Movement. And this is what El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz, aka Malcolm X, said. Nationalism is the wave of the present and the future. It is nationalism that's bringing freedom to oppressed people all over the world. It was nationalism that brought freedom to the Algerians. It was nationalism that brought freedom to the Nigerians and to the Ghanaians. It was nationalism that brought freedom to the people of Uganda and Tanganyika and Sudan and Somaliland. The Africans didn't get it by sitting in. They didn't get it by waiting in. And they didn't get it by singing "We Shall Overcome." They got it through nationalism. And when you look at what Fidel Castro did in Cuba, he nationalized Cuba, and he kicked all the Europeans claiming any Cuban estate via the United States Corporation Company out of Cuba. That's why here in North Morocco, the Europeans via the democracy paint him as an evil man, because he was fighting against them. Any questions? Any questions from the child? I'm about to sign off.
Twice.
Nationality is the order of the day, because everyone is suffering from European colonial occupation of their land, of the planet. Everyone. No questions? Cool. You can view the quitclaim or quit rent deed on risingthemore.org. There's other writs on there too. Thank y'all for tuning in. Study, study, study. If you ask me what to study next, I'll say study yourselves. Peace. Everything else. All right, more